I've been getting a lot of questions asking me how the wagon search has been going and if I got a wagon. So today I'm going to update you on what's been going on. So about a year ago to this day, it is May 22nd, 2024. I sold my 2003 Ford F150. That was my daily driver. I got rid of it in order to be able to buy a 210 wagon. So ever since then and the months leading up to the sale of my truck, so it's actually been almost close to a year and a half, I've been searching for a W210 wagon every single day on multiple different listing sites. So it was not until I sold my truck that I could be really serious about buying a wagon. However, I was still looking, and there was maybe one or two cars that were potentially okay, but they were out of state, and from the photos they looked pretty rough. So in this video I will show you pictures of cars I looked at. I just want to show you just how rough these cars are after 20 years old and what I'm looking for. So let's start with a little backstory. Why did I sell my truck? There's a couple different reasons, but let me list out some of them. If you do remember, my truck was fueled by compressed natural gas and is only compressed natural gas, so CNG was its fuel source. CNG is being phased out by all the major manufacturers, so Honda no longer makes it, Toyota stopped making it, Ford still kind of makes it as a biofuel option. That means you could fill up your car with CNG and gas, but it's a lot less common to find these days, so it's only offered on like maybe one or two models. For the most part, CNG is being phased out, and because of that, stations are becoming less and less available. More of them are closing down, and at least in my area, they're in various states of disrepair. They're not always operational and open, so that was definitely a contributing factor. If I were to drive the truck long distance, I would have to plan out ahead, and making gas stops, it was super out of the way. Like, gas stations for CNG aren't available everywhere. You have to go specific ones, and there's just maybe about 1 to 2 per city, so it's not that common. Although when I got my truck, it only had 60,000 miles, which is way lower than both of these cars. It was not in perfect shape. It was a city truck. It was actually owned by City of Phoenix Aviation Department, and it was definitely beat up, but it was in decent mechanical shape, so it wasn't horrible. But towards the end of my ownership, it started needing more and more things, and although I did like it, I wanted to keep it operational. I just didn't want to put the money and effort into it towards the end of the operation because of the CNG issues I was having. The cost of ownership of that truck was higher than both of these cars, so registration was more than both of these cars, as well as the insurance, so that's another reason why I got rid of it. Another reason I got rid of it is because it's uncomfortable. So if you remember, it was a single cab long bed. It is a full work truck spec, no power windows, no power door locks, no power mirrors. It is a very basic truck. I remember specifically the day I got really over the truck. My friend had just bought his 210 wagon and he let me drive it, and then later I was sitting in traffic in my truck and the seat was just super uncomfortable. So being a single cab, the seat cannot recline back. It is just a bench seat, and although it is fine for the most part, but when you sit in traffic for long periods of time, especially over the years, I had that truck for 4 years. By the end of it, you just get tired of it. It was kind of hard on my back when I drove my friend's wagon, when I drive my 210, my 124. When I sit in traffic, it's really a nice place to be. It's a pretty comfortable car. Even when you sit in traffic, being in a car that you like and enjoy is just a more pleasant experience to be in than sitting in a car that's just kind of a basic mode of transportation, especially a utility vehicle like a truck. Nothing against trucks. Perhaps if mine was a crew cab in a higher trim level, like at least an XLT or Lariat with nicer seats that reclined, it probably wouldn't be as bad. But being a work truck, it was just a pretty harsh ride. It wasn't comfortable. Not having all those little amenities kind of sucked, especially not being able to roll the passenger window down pretty easy and the door locks. So there's a lot of little things like I'm mentioning that made the truck not comfortable, but it was a total utility vehicle. I mean, it got a lot of stuff done, but this is what I also thought about too when I got rid of it. Most of the heavy moving that I did, the engines that I moved, like all the big heavy stuff for cars, the dirty stuff, it really wasn't for me. Like, that was not my stuff that I was moving. So I realized that I didn't need a truck for my personal use. Now, of course, when I was moving some of that stuff, I was making money here and there, but it wasn't like a main thing for me. So I realized for my needs, a vehicle like SUV or wagon would be better suited. Because I drove my 210 a lot and I drove my friend's wagon, I decided that'd be the perfect car. I love 210s. I know how to work on them. I have a lot of spare parts, obviously. That's just a car I like being in. So if I was stuck in traffic somewhere, I really wouldn't mind being in a car like this. And speaking of friends and wagons, in the last year, a couple of my friends got 210s. 4 people I know got wagons, and like 3 or 4 other people I also know got sedans. So there's a lot of 210s that my friends are purchasing and I'm not. It's kind of frustrating to not have one myself. Well, I have my 210, but I'm mainly speaking about getting a wagon. So hopefully soon I'll be able to have my own and we can join their fun. Anyways, those are some of the reasons I sold the truck and some of the reasons why I wanted a 210 wagon. So not too long after making a decision to buy a wagon, I started collecting some parts. I do have these smoke taillights for a wagon. I do have front bumpers, side skirts. These wheels on my 210 will go on the wagon. I have a full interior saw I got. So that was like one instance where I did kind of need a truck to pick up that stuff, but I just rented one from U-Haul. Prior to that, I think there's only 1 or 2 other instances I really need a truck. So throughout the course of the years, I probably would have only needed to rent a truck 2 to 3 times. So driving a more comfortable car daily really just makes more sense. I don't need a truck. I never towed with it. I didn't really haul too much heavy stuff with it for myself. So it just made perfect sense to get rid of it and get a car that I want to drive every day, that's fun, that's still practical for the most part, and that I know how to work on. I know the car's ins and outs because I've owned my 210 for 10 years. So now my garage is filled more of parts that I'm not using for the wagon, but hopefully it will pay off because I do want to get that wagon and we can put those parts in the wagon and then my garage will clear up a little bit. You kind of have to do this with a car this age. You kind of have to buy parts when they become available because they're not always readily available to buy. Which, now saying that out loud, I realize that's kind of a downside of owning such an old car. Like, you might not be able to get the parts you want or need. Even though the parts may be difficult to find, hopefully that'll not hinder me from driving the car daily. And that is kind of my goal, as I want to drive this car every single day. Hold me accountable to that, but this car will not be a garage queen under the covers like these two cars. These two cars I could daily if I wanted them. The 124 is actually in really good mechanical shape to do so. 210 is almost there, but I just don't want to. Like, this car being a convertible is not ideal to drive every day, you know, just because if there's bad weather or something happens to the top. I also think it's a little bit too nice to drive every day. Same thing with the 210. I just made it a little too nice to drive every single day, so I don't want to daily use cars at all. So obviously I do keep my cars a certain way. No matter how nice the wagon is, no matter how nice I make the wagon, I really do not plan to park it. I plan to drive it. So these two cars, I don't know, I'm just too afraid to drive them because I put so much time and effort into it. Even though I might do the same on the wagon, my plan is to not stop driving it. I'll just keep fixing whatever breaks and whatever gets scuffed up. But these two cars, I got them to this point and I want to keep them there. Okay, so now let's talk about some of the cars I've looked at in person, and then afterwards I will explain exactly what I'm looking for in a wagon. So the very first car I looked at in person was actually right after the event at House of Imports Cars and Coffee, where I took my 210. So I drove my car, did the event, then I came back home and went to San Diego to check out a 2001, I believe it was, E320 wagon, rear wheel drive, 040 black interior. In the pictures, you couldn't really tell there's too much wrong with the car. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but I think it had good bones. My main concern with these cars is that the body of the car has to be decent. What I mean is the quarter panels, kind of the rear, I mean, the bumper could be scuffed. The tailgate on these wagons usually rust. That could be rusty, that's okay. I'm willing to replace it or repair it. The doors need to be good. The roof needs to be good. I don't mind painting the entire front end, so the fenders, the hood, the front bumper, all that can be messed up, but the main body of the car needs to be decent enough where I don't need to paint it. In a perfect world, it would have original paint and all I have to do is polish it up. But being a 20-year-old car, especially a wagon that people kind of just abused and neglected, it's probably not going to happen, but that's kind of what I'm looking for. So in the pictures of that car, it was 040 black. I ran the VIN number. It looked pretty decent. The front end, it looked like it needed to be resprayed. The headlights were faded, of course. The interior was black, but wasn't super nice. But I'm not looking for a super nice interior as long as it's black. The headliner was, of course, sagging. They put thumbtacks to hold it up. But when I got there in person, unfortunately, the roof had rust, which is just too much for me. I don't want to have to deal with a rusty roof. And then the front end was super screwed up. The hood would not close properly. And then when I went to open the rear hatch, it was very difficult to move. Either something was wrong with the struts where they're just super messed up, or the hinges were twisted and bent. So about a minute of walking around the car, I knew I wasn't gonna buy it. I kind of just took a couple photos and went back home. So that was kind of disappointing because I got up super early. I was thinking about the car all night. I didn't sleep at all because I really thought it was the one, and it would have been super cool that happened right after I sold my truck. That was pretty quick, but unfortunately that was not the case. The next car I went to go look at was in Los Angeles. It was a 2002 E320 wagon, rear wheel drive, 040 black interior. I believe it had no options. The car was actually abandoned for many years. The guy parked it in front of his business and the thing was just full of spiders, spider webs, and it leaked oil all on the ground because it sat for so long. And the battery was dead, so of course he had to replace it before I got there. But that car, for some reason, it had a lot of chips on the side, which is kind of strange. And those chips were there for quite a while because it was starting to rust out on the quarter panel. So that was kind of disappointing. I did get to drive the car and it drove okay. It wasn't horrible. Like, I saw that the engine was leaking for sure. Maybe the transmission was, so who knows the condition of those parts. So the car sitting for so long obviously needed a lot of things. So I would pretty much guess one of everything. There's a couple issues I noticed when driving the car. Of course, having the battery replaced, you know, the cluster was like a Christmas tree. But the one thing that bothered me the most was all the doors were closed and the rear interior lights would not shut off. So there was some sort of electrical problem, and that would of course be a lot of effort to fix. So that kind of turned me off. And then what was weird was it needed to have at least one full side of the car resprayed, parts of the other side, and in the front of the car there was like some hail damage on the hood, so a ton of dents. The best course of action for that would have been to replace the hood, and I just don't want to do that. I wouldn't mind paying the front end, but when you start to have to replace body panels, like major ones like the hood, then stuff just starts to kind of spiral out of control, and it was just too much for me. And when I went to go look at that wagon, unfortunately it was nighttime, so I did bring a flashlight with me, of course, but you really can't see what you see at night during the day. From what I saw, the roof did not appear to be rusty. I think the hatch actually looked okay too, but basically 3/4 of the car would need to be painted, and at that point, especially since I'm going to be doing a body kit, pretty much the whole car should be painted, and I did not want to paint a whole car, so that car was out of the question for me. It just needed a little bit too much. So next up was another wagon in Los Angeles. This one was a 2000. I am not looking for a 2000 model year because the fact that the electronics are older, so it is ME 2.0. So for those that don't know, ME 2.0 makes it a little bit difficult if you want to swap the car in the future for a different engine, transmission, whatever. In the model year 2001, these cars got ME 2.8, which allows a lot of the stuff on this car to be recoded pretty easily. And the way you tell if a car is 2000 or 2001 is if you go on the inside, you have the mileage displayed, you push the up on the steering wheel, and it shows the miles per hour. This is what comes with ME 2.8. So I'm not buying it for this reason, although it is nice. I am buying it because the electronics are easier to code. So if I were to swap the engine or the transmission into something else other than factory, it could be done so easily and make it function and look like factory. So the likelihood of me swapping the engine or transmission in the wagon is actually very low, but I don't want to rule that possibility out, which is why I want to go with the 2001 plus model year so I can get ME 2.8 in case in the future, if the opportunity comes up to swap the engine, to swap the transmission to something cool, I could have it coded really easily, and if I get a star computer myself, I could kind of learn how to do those things. So anyways, I got sidetracked there, but I went to go look at 2000 model year E320. It was 040 black, same color as this, black interior. It had heated seats, it had the orthopedic seats, it had xenon headlights, rear wheel drive, kind of exactly what I was looking for. And in photos it looked decent. It had some aftermarket wheels, but that does not matter because these wheels will go on that car, so those wheels I would just sell or throw away. I wouldn't care. So I went to go look at it. It was an hour drive away from me in LA. Within the first minute, I already knew I wasn't going to buy it, so that's kind of disappointing. You spend all this time driving there getting excited about the car. You can see immediately there's something wrong with it that I didn't want to deal with. Problem with that car, well, first of all, the guy was kind of flipping it. I hate flippers, so don't want to give him my money, but the main problem was the roof had a ton of rust all around the corners of the roof. So let's say this is the hatch right here, and then this is the body of the car. There's a lot of rust right around the corner on the left and right side. There's some rust in the front of the roof as well. So immediately I knew that car was a non-starter. I poked my head inside the car, but I didn't even ask the guy to pull out the car from where it was. I just said it's not for me, and then I left. So the next car I went to go look at was a 2002 E320 wagon. It was 040 black on tan interior, or sometimes referred to as Java. So that wasn't ideal for me, but I mainly went to go look at it because my dad said potentially he might be interested in the wagon. So we went to go look at it. It wasn't too far from us, luckily, so that was a pretty easy trip. We got there and we were waiting for the guy. We went to do a little walk around in the car. So immediately the first thing I noticed was that the front fender had a ton of damage, like someone just like went into it a lot. The whole body of the car was really rough. The car was well maintained though. He had a lot of documents kind of showing all the service that has been done. It went to a local mechanic that kind of specializes in these older cars. What was immediately wrong with the car was it had so much rust. This is probably one of the rustiest wagons I ever saw. So the whole hatch was rusty, so usually along the window was rusty there. The corners of the roof were rusty, as well as the front of the roof, and all around the sunroof was super rusty on that car. So once again, before the guy even got there, we told him we're not interested and we left. So that's kind of unfortunate because if it wasn't so rusty, it actually would have been a really good car for my dad. Actually, it wouldn't be really too bad of a car for me if the body wasn't so beat up. The tan interior, yes, it'd be a lot to swap in. If the body's clean enough, I think I'd be willing to deal with that. But being so beat up and needing pretty much a lot of panels cut out, replaced, welded, and the whole car needing to be painted, on top of me having to swap the entire interior, I didn't want to deal with that. So that was a very easy car to pass on. So there was another car that kind of popped up. It really wasn't for me. It was a 2000 E320 wagon, silver on gray, in very good condition. This is kind of the condition I want to get the car in when I buy it. The owner loved it. He took care of it. The only problem was it was a 2000. It had gray interior, so I really wasn't sold on it. It was priced on the higher end of things, but the guy did all the work to it. This is the type of car you want to buy. It had all the issues addressed. The car drove perfectly. I even test drove it. It wasn't for me. I really do want an 01 plus, and I preferred to have black interior. It was a shame because that car was super clean. So that was the last 210 wagon I saw in person. The next wagon my friend Mark in San Diego went to go check out for me. So I don't know if Mark watches these videos, but I gotta say huge thank you to him. It's kind of a mission to get down to San Diego from here on a whim, and he went to go do it, and I'm really grateful for that. And it's such a shame this wagon was too rusty as well, but it really been cool to get because the paint was white. I really do like white on 210s. I think they look amazing. So that would have been really nice to get, and the interior was black. It was perfect. So that would have been a really cool car to get, but unfortunately it was too rusty. So same issue. The corners of the roof were rusty. Luckily my friend Mark, he knows what to look at, and he took really good photos. He even drove it. He sent me a video. So having friends like Mark to go look at cars when you can't, it's really nice, and I really appreciate it. So I don't know if you're watching this, Mark, but I'm super thankful that you went to go look at that wagon for me. So the roof was rusty, and then some weird issues with the wagons is on the doors. When you pull back this seal right around here, there'll be rust pretty much right where this pillar is. So that wagon had that issue. So usually the rust at the top of the door there, it will get really bad. You'll just have to replace the door. You can't really cut and replace it. It's such a weird spot for rust to be. I would have to at least replace the rear doors. For the roof, depending on how bad it is, you might have to replace the whole roof. I don't want to do that. And kind of the same weird issue as the other car. It had some chips on the side that rusted out. The body of that car was just not nice enough. It's just such a bummer because that car really could have been the one. White on black would have been cool. So those are all the wagons I looked at and considered. Now let's talk about what I want. A lot of people get confused. A lot of you have sent me wagons for sale via Instagram and my email, and one person, I believe in Atlanta, sent me his wagon that he potentially wanted to sell. So thank you for sending me that. I appreciate the offer. It was a facelift wagon. I believe it was 01 plus, and he 55 swapped it, which is really cool. But when you send me your cars for sale, if you want to send me your car for sale, please put a price on it. Don't tell me to make an offer. You got to put a price on what you're selling. Otherwise, I'm not going to make you an offer. If you want to send me a link to a car for sale, please double check a couple things for me. So please make sure it's a W210. I had it 1, 2, or 3 sent to me. I really do appreciate people sending me cars, but just take a minute and double check the ad, please. For model year, I really only want 2001, 2002, and in the US market, 2003 was a model year for 210 wagons. So 1, 2, and 3. No 2000s, no 99s, nothing older. Only those cars. And of course, being in the US, we only got E320s here. There's no E430 wagon. There's no E55 wagon in the US market. Absolutely no 4MATICs. There's no exception, no 4MATICs. I don't want to deal with a 4MATIC. It has to be rear-wheel drive only. If you are asking why no 4MATIC, I just don't want to deal with it. The front suspension is completely different. The engine is actually different. There's just less parts available. I want a rear-wheel drive car. I don't want a 4MATIC. I don't need a 4MATIC, so that is why. The next 2 things I'm asking for, I'm kind of flexible with depending on the condition of the car. If the car's in really good shape, I'd be willing to make an exception, but if the car needs kind of the normal amount of work, I would prefer the interior to be black. It doesn't need to be any special, like whatever Designo color, but it cannot be tan, it cannot be gray, it has to be black. So why does it have to have black interior? Well, I'll tell you why. Because when you have tan or gray, the carpets, the dash, all that's different, and the tan has actually a different headliner. It's a tan headliner, so that's a lot of stuff to change out. Of course, I am planning to redo the headliner in the wagon no matter what. I am a little spoiled with my Alcantara. I don't want to change out the dash. I really don't want to change out a tan or gray dash just because of the color. And then the carpets are going to be a lot. And then with the wagon, the second and third row, the seat belts are specific. So it'll be really hard to find a set of black seat belts for a wagon, a set of B-pillars, C-pillars, all the little trim in the second and third rows of a wagon are specific. And you may be asking, well, didn't you buy a wagon interior to swap in? Yes, I did, but it was not all those little trim pieces. It was just the front seats, the rear seats, the third row, and the door panels. I don't have any of the other associating parts to go with it. I don't have the seat belts. I don't have the little plastic trim. I don't have the pillars. There's just a lot of little things that go with the full interior when it's tan or gray. It has to have black interior. So like I said, if the car is exceptionally clean and it's a good deal, I will consider getting other interior colors. I could definitely swap the interior. The car needs to be exceptional in other areas. Which brings us to the next point, body color. Like I said, if the body is clean and it has black interior, I'm willing to accept pretty much any color, but I would prefer 040 black. I want to match my sedan. I know that sounds like I'm asking for a lot, but that's just something I prefer. It'd be really nice since my wheels are already color matched, so they'd be already color matched to the wagon if it was 040 black. But they did make the wagons in other colors other than 040 black. There was Obsidian 197. I'm sure there's a couple others, but 040 is the preferred color. So I'm a little flexible in those last two categories of interior color and body color if the car is really nice, low mileage, or a good deal. If you're sending me a 4MATIC Desert Silver on Java with 300,000 miles that's super screwed up all around, that needs everything, I'm gonna pass on it. So just please keep that in mind when you're looking for cars for me. Another thing I forgot to mention as well is the mileage does not matter. I will take any mileage. I don't care how high it is, as long as the car is in good shape. Like it can have 400,000 miles. That's not a problem with me. Mileage is irrelevant. I'm gonna drive this car a lot and I want to put 1,000,000 miles on it myself. Any mileage, just please, good condition is what I'm looking for. So another requirement as well is the rust has to be very minimal. And by minimal, I mean it could really only be on the hatch, but that's pretty much where I draw the line. I don't want to repair the roof. The roof is just too much. It's too invasive because usually it rusts from the inside out. So I have to drop the entire headliner, take out the hatch, send it to a body shop and hope they could cut and weld it in. Don't want to deal with that. So the entire roof, it's not just the corners. The areas around the sunroof rust, like I showed in the pictures. Anything in the front, fenders, hood, as long as it's not attached to the main body like the radiator support, I can replace the front end. That's no problem with me. But the main body, like the quarter panels, cannot have rust. So if the wagon is rusty, I prefer it limited to the hatch. I could replace the hatch or repair the hatch. Really don't want to deal with anything else. Rust on the roof is an immediate non-starter. So unfortunately, with these cars being 20 years old, being left outside, these cars are starting to rust. I now understand why all the people in Europe was saying these cars are rusty. They do rust in a lot of weird places. But being in California for the first 10 years of their lives, they really didn't rust. This is actually a really good place for them to be. But now that these cars are 20 plus years old, the rust is starting to show. It's just inevitable because it's mainly the seals that rot out, that trap moisture in there, that dirt gets in there, and it rusts from the inside out. So unfortunately, if a car's been left outside, it's more susceptible to that. If it's a garage kept, it's very likely it won't have any rust. So if you're asking why are my requirements the way they are, I really want the wagon to match my sedan. This is like the car I spent the most time in, a lot of my youth in. I prefer to kind of have the same vibes. That is kind of why I want it in 04 black with black interior. I really want this car to be kind of how I want it because this car I plan to keep forever. I mean, I own this car 10 years. I've owned this car for almost 10 years. I don't just buy and sell cars and just get rid of them. This car I will keep. For a car I plan to keep forever, I kind of want to get it like at least a little bit how I want it. Like it's not going to be exactly how I want it because I'm still going to do a lot of stuff to it, but it just needs to have good bones and the right color. Of course, I am looking every single day myself, so don't be thinking I'm lazy. The first thing I do when I wake up is I look at Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, and OfferUp within 1,000 miles of my area for these cars. I look every single day. The first thing when I wake up, middle of the day, right before I go to sleep. There's no one looking harder for this car than me. My friends are even leaving my phone number on cars they see parked in the street. Don't think I'm slacking here. I told myself when I sold my truck that it would take 1 to 2 years to buy a wagon. We are now at the end of year 1, beginning of year 2. So hopefully this is the year I get my wagon. So I'm just trying to stay optimistic. Hopefully this is it. If not, I'll obviously continue searching. The wagon is just the right fit for me. We'll just keep searching until I find the right one, however long it takes. I also want to give an update on these two cars and just a little general update. So obviously I'm kind of not doing too much to these cars at this point. I'm trying to save for the wagon to purchase it. I want to be ready to buy it when the time comes. So that's kind of why I've not been doing too much to my 210 or the 124. The 210 does need a little bit of work. I mentioned in my 10-year video, but the main thing is the driveline rubber, like the motor mounts, trans mount, flex disc, stuff like that. I have some of the parts in the trunk actually, but there's a lot of stuff I want to do to these cars. But right now I just got to put it on pause to be ready for that wagon when the day comes. So hopefully that'll be soon because I love to get back to doing some stuff on these cars. The wagon will happen no matter what. It's just a matter of time. So obviously I'm not buying this wagon for content or anything like that. These cars are really not popular content cars. This is really for me. I'm just sharing my passion with all you guys, and it's so cool to see a lot of you kind of share that passion. The people I met in person, especially over the last weekend over at the Mercedes shows, it's just so nice to hear that you find these videos helpful and that you enjoy them, and hopefully some of the more fun stuff is still entertaining. I know I'm not the most interesting person in the world. I just really like these cars. I just want to share the knowledge that I gained over the last 10 years of owning them, so hopefully your ownership is a little bit easier than mine. And another thing I want to point out too is we are really close to hitting 7,000 subscribers at the filming of this video, so I just want to say thank you to all of you. Thank you to those that have been watching since the beginning. I really do appreciate it. I want to give a shout out to those that have channel memberships. So thank you to Neek, Christopher Serrano, Michael Schneider, Deranged07, and Richard Wilson. Your little contribution helps tremendously. Appreciate all you guys for supporting. Cheers to 7,000. Hopefully we'll continue to grow. If you want to send me a listing or a wagon for sale, you can contact me through Instagram. That's a really good way to do so. You can also check out my email. If you go to my about page on my YouTube channel, while you're signed in, you'll be able to see it. If not, I'll put it up on the screen right here. It is socal210@gmail.com. So SoCal, the number 2, ten@gmail.com. That is my email. You can send me anything there. Really do appreciate anyone that sent me anything. Hopefully this wagon will come soon enough and we could start filming some really cool stuff. So that's how the past year searching for a wagon has gone. So when I get the wagon, of course, I will let you guys know. We'll film a video on it. So in the meantime, I'll keep searching and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.